We just have to wait it out. Good evening. Welcome to Divorce Periscope. My name is Keila Gilbert, and I'm an attorney, a mediator, and I'm the founder of Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation. This series covers a number of topics that are of interest to people going through divorce, and we always invite another professional who can bring some real perspective into our topic. And tonight we are so fortunate to have with us Stacee Paley, who is a psychotherapist here in the Doylestown area. Now I'm going to let Stacee tell you a little bit about her background, and then we're going to start talking about our topic, and that is the hard road through cheating and divorce.
So my name is Stacee Paley, and I own a counseling center in Doylestown, and we are primarily child, family, couples therapists. We work with all aspects of the family: the individual, the family, the couple, the teenager, the child, and over the years I've found that we've worked a lot with affairs and divorce. And anyway, so.
Okay, well, let's just start off with a few statistics. And I researched the internet and I found a lot of variation. So I'm going to give you the range of what I found. First of all, 40 to 50% of spouses cheat. Does that sound?
It does sound appropriate. However, I think when they made that study, what they base that on is a very global, low socioeconomic level to high socioeconomic level. But really we find that different socioeconomic levels are really have a different, the number looks different.
Okay.
Which I found really interesting.
Yes. So are there more cheating spouses at a higher economic level?
No.
Or the reverse is true?
Kind of the reverse,
Oh,
you know.
okay.
And higher up they find that you know, the more we have to lose.
Mm-hmm.
The more resources we have, the more ability we have to go to couples therapy, the more ability we have to reach out to our friends,
Mm-hmm.
the more, you know, we're financially stable,
Mm-hmm.
We're less likely to reach out to that other person.
Okay. And
Stress,
yeah.
anxiety, frustration, sometimes we
And
feel that
we have
lowers.
plenty of that.
We do, I know.
Now, we're painting with a broad brush, and
We
of
are,
course,
yes.
of course, there are cheating spouses in all walks of life. The next stat that I read was that from 17% to 29% of the people who have affairs or cheat during the marriage, that marriage ends in divorce. Does that comport with your experience?
It does. It does. You know, and again, it varies. So that number would be very appropriate with my practice
Okay.
and what I see.
So now that we've gone through the numbers, let's talk about the heartache, the rest of the experience individually. And what I'd like to do is have you share with us your perspective on how it looks and the experience it affects each party in a cheating situation. So you have the cheater, you have the cheated, and you have the children.
Correct.
Oftentimes.
Correct.
So let's start with the person who does the cheating. Can you tell us a little bit about not so much what brings them to that, but what they experience when they're going through the breakup of a marriage after they have cheated?
Okay, so not so much about what I see in my practice about how they got there. It's more about what happens next.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times, and I do kind of have to backpedal to get
Yes.
to the next
Uh-huh.
level, but by the time people get to me, usually somebody's been caught.
Mm-hmm.
Either somebody's been caught or somebody's in a situation that they don't feel comfortable with. I'm cheating on my significant other, and I'm hating myself for this, and blah, blah, blah. But I'm in love with the other person. And so what I find, and this is going to be really interesting, because if you think about an affair, it's half man, half woman, or 2 women, 2 men, but primarily in my practice,
Mm-hmm.
half woman, half man. And so, but more of my females will leave the marriage than my males.
Mm-hmm.
They just find love, and they're out. They
Just,
do not always tell their man no.
okay. Do they, you talked about them disclosing the affair. So most of the time when they get into the divorce stage, the other party is acutely aware of what happened?
No.
No. Oh.
No, but if they're going, and so So if you're going to leave your marriage because you're, say, in love with somebody else, these people will kind of keep it a secret. Or they'll say, I'm in love with somebody else and I'm out of this marriage because you haven't met my needs. But the other half is the ones that get found out. And although a lot of those will end in divorce, I don't really see them ending in divorce as much as I do the other half.
Okay.
I know that sounds...
Yeah, I'm just trying
to take those numbers.
Okay.
So let's take then just the half that is going through the divorce process. They've decided, hey, listen, I'm in love with this other person and I'm out.
Okay.
A lot of times they won't say something because they don't want to muddy the waters in the divorce. They don't want to look bad. They feel bad. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've done this to my significant other. I love them. And a lot of times people think that the affair is about the significant other, but it's really about the person they're having the affair with, and all eyes are on that person. And it's frustrating to the person who's kind of left over on the other side. I know we're kind of gearing this toward the divorce.
Yeah.
But the person who's kind of going through the divorce is kind of left with like, why are we going, what happened? And how did we go from like, we were getting along well and...
Yeah, so they're caught sort of blindsided.
Definitely. And if they don't know, they're kind of like left feeling crazy.
Yeah, okay, and so what I'm hearing from you...
gaslighting.
What I'm hearing from you is that the person who cheats, understandably, has a lot of guilt. A lot of shame. Is that pretty much the standard?
It is. There's, so I was telling you about this book that I love. It's called After the Affair, and it's by Janice Abrams Brinn. And what she talks about in this book, After the Affair, she gears the book as the hurt, the hurter, and then the child, So she's very much like your language, right?
Okay.
So, but instead of her judging it as, again, not judging, but hurt, and then the one who's the hurter, she says there are 5 reasons we have affairs. And a lot of us have affairs because we're nice people. We just fell down the slippery slope and we're having an affair. We fell in love and we just can't stop ourselves. And so...
Is it always love? Or
No, because that's what happens with the... So maybe the top 3 reasons are that, but then the other 2 are, I'm a narcissist, and I feel I'm entitled to ideal love, and I'm entitled to this perfect life, and so I don't care about my significant other or my children. It's all about me and my happiness. These people actually are serial affair people anyway. They're kind of constantly have affairs. They're constantly...
To feed their egos,
Absolutely,
I guess.
absolutely. And they believe, they drink their own Kool-Aid. They believe that they are actually entitled to this really,
And I would think that there are some people that just stumble upon them, not really expecting to have an affair.
I would say 75% of them. I look at it as, as a company, the foundation might not be there for them in their marriage, and they are at work, and it's a takeover. The person takes over, or they're at, football, or they're somewhere in their life where they're constantly around this other person, and the other person just meets their needs.
And let me just share with you
Sure.
what I see when these couples come into my office. And they come in to my office for a consultation. They're looking for, how do we get out of this without going to war and spending a lot of money, taking years to get through this. It's painful enough. Stop the pain as quickly as we can. And it's interesting. I see a lot of shame, a lot of sorrow on the part of the cheater. I see a lot of wounds in the person who's been cheated upon, and a lot of distrust from that person. I guess because it's such a violation of the trust.
We actually
that
look at it almost as a trauma. You take a piece of and you broke it in half, and so everything. A lot of times, and I know you've seen a lot of my patients who have had affairs, and I know they'll say to you, gosh, I kind of went back in time now, and I'm starting to say, was anything that we had real?
Yes.
Was everything invalidated? Was it ever?
It's as though the ground just gets
It
pulled out
does.
from under
It's
them.
just somebody in there.
And then they come to me, and my job, as I see it, is to get them to go to someone like you to get the good help that they need for those difficult emotions, whether they're the cheater or the cheated upon.
Right.
But my job is to help them make decisions to dismantle their old life and create two separate new lives. And those emotions are something that can get in the way of making those decisions. For example, the cheated upon may feel like, well, I'm entitled to more because he or she did this to me. And the reality is, under law, that's not true.
I see that all the time.
Yeah, and it's they're seeking something to soothe their wounds, and it's not, the legal system is not going to do that. And to the extent that they hire litigation attorneys, go to war, hire private detectives, and all of that, they spend a lot of money and a lot of energy and months and years trying to get back or to get revenge or feel better about themselves or feel like they got some control, and at the end they lose terribly.
Everything. And so you were asking me, the time the divorce then finally, these people have come to me, or the person, at that point I'm not seeing the couple, I'm seeing a person.
Right.
My husband cheated on me and I'm really sad and this is really hurtful, and we either look at it as the new normal. I have a patient who, she's amazing. I always tell her she's my poster child for her husband. She's the working mom. She's working, and he was more of the stay-at-home parent, and he actually had an affair with another stay-at-home parent, and she, she kept moving forward. She's like, I don't want this, and I know what you're saying. It's, you've hurt me 100%, and therefore I want 100% of your earnings.
Right.
Right, and there's no correlation there.
No,
You're saying,
no.
I hear you, and that makes total sense,
Yes.
but it's still going to be the logarithm that the state of Pennsylvania has come up with, and you're not going to get, but that's how everybody is, period, when they're in pain.
Oh,
I feel 80% angry, and you're going to give me 80% of everything I feel like I've earned.
That's interesting, applying percentages like that.
But it's true.
Yeah, it is
It
very
is
true,
true.
because we deal with percentages when we're dividing the
I know.
assets. And usually in the courts it goes anywhere from 50-50 to 60-40.
Right.
But someone that's not thinking clearly and trying to seek revenge can, go off to a litigation attorney and think they're going to get 90%, and it doesn't happen.
No.
The only place in the law, locally, that an affair may have some impact is on alimony. So,
Alimony or spousal support?
well,
Because this is very, I'm so glad you're talking about this, because I am going to have my patients watch this tomorrow. And we are always wondering, because I was under the belief that if you were the stay-at-home parent and you caused the affair, or you had the affair and you caused the divorce, that you are not, if you can prove it, that you are not entitled to spousal support?
well,
Because it's a no-fault state.
Yeah, it's a no-fault state, and so they aren't laying blame, but entitlement to spousal support and alimony is based on a number of factors, and among those, I think it's 15 factors, one says that having an infidelity may be a bar to receiving alimony. So it's one of 15, and it's a very small possibility that it is actually going to impact that spousal support or alimony.
That is so interesting,
Yeah.
because, most of the time, my patients will come back in and go, I get nothing, and I'm so angry, in
It's
this,
like a double wound.
It
They've been
is.
cheated on, and
she's like, wait, hold on, I'm the working mom, he stays
Yeah,
home, and
yeah.
now I'm paying him alimony and whatever. He was really smart, because then he moved in with said significant other, and so he lost everything in the end anyway. But my point is with her is, we really walk through, in this particular case, I believe he was a narcissist. And she realized she had a new normal. She wasn't going to have the same. She knew she was going to have to live in a townhouse. She has children, and he immediately moved in with immediately told the children about the other person and acted like it wasn't real. And she's like, it's real, but I'm not going to really lose sleep over it, because either way I'm not married anymore.
Right. It is, that shock to the system of living in a different house, not putting your kids to bed every night, separating, relying on your own earnings. It's a very traumatic transition, but I like your reference to calling it the new normal.
And that's what she says. That's what we say. It's the new normal. It's the new I'm missing an arm,
Mm-hmm.
but I learn to compensate, and I learn.
And what I've seen from my perspective, both personally and professionally, is that if you handle it right, you keep your head on straight, and you don't go off to war, and as I say, send your lawyer's kids to college instead of your own.
Well, and that was another case that you guys have worked on for me.
Yeah. So if you really keep it together and take one step at a time and come through, our mediation program instead of going off to war, you're going to get past this. And guess what? Life can be even better than you ever imagined it. But it's a tunnel, and they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm there trying to get them to step through the tunnel. You're going to have to divide this house. We're going, one of you is going to keep the house, or you're going to sell it. All of those difficult decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But if they keep moving in a mediation program and not stall, they will get to that new life.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so hard for them to see it when they're in so much pain and so much is up in the air.
It is,
Yeah.
and it's the fear of the unknown. And
Yes,
I think you just said something that I think why these people as these people, and I love my patients. So when they're going through it, I want to show them.
Mm-hmm.
I want to show them on the map, like, hey, listen, this is where you are today.
Yes.
But I do this 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I would say out of my 40 hours of patients, probably 30 hours are because of divorce and affairs.
Oh, wow.
And so I see this quite frequently, and I want to show them that, like, with time, you're going to be okay. It's a new normal. It's not, but you're going to be okay. And it's not funny, but it's interesting when I do my own little, I call it my couch stats. Watching on my couch how people kind of progress. I have another patient that came to you guys, and she is my typical narcissist. I had them as a couple for a minute, and then I actually have him still. Beautiful, smart, interesting. She traveled the world, but she was having numerous affairs, and he was like, at first like, oh, I want to try and work on things, and then all of a sudden you could see his eyes go, okay, this isn't going anywhere. So they came here and they worked through that, but he realized quickly on she was never going to change. And it was literally the fastest divorce I've ever had in the history of my practice.
Okay.
And they're fine.
Yeah.
They're fine. He's fine. He's moved on, and she's doing her thing. She is regretting it now and wants to come back and try and work things out. And he is like, I am so glad that I'm not going through that anymore.
There really is brightness in life beyond it, and it's just so hard to get them to look at it. Now, another thing that I've encountered is the cheating spouse has so much guilt that they'll sit at the mediation table
and give you it all.
Give it all, as though that's going to take away what's happened or make up for it. And my problem with that is that we're always looking to make sure that both people land on their feet, that they have a good place to stay, they've got some, what I call the cash stash, they've got enough money that they're not living in fear, and they've got some retirement. So if you're the guilty spouse in an affair and you give everything away, you are going to continue suffering without that stability. And you add another layer to that problem is the children. If the children are coming over to visit you in your little apartment with no beds or just a sofa,
right?
That's not good for them either. So even though you feel this guilt, it's really best to focus on the future and both of you landing on your feet for your own well-being and for your children. So
I will say that I have seen that. I see it more on the other side, where I'll get somebody and they'll say, well, they didn't. I gave her everything, or I gave him everything. I don't. But that you're right, and it's good to hear that you're still looking out for equality.
Yes.
Fair is fair.
Yes, and we can't dictate it, but we certainly do our best to guide them in that direction and get their antennas up to the fact that, giving everything away is not going to take away the pain, the guilt. It's just going to take away your security, and it's going to impact not only you but your children if they're involved in, coming to visit you and not being able to go on vacations with you or whatever.
Right.
So let's talk about kids.
Okay.
Do you find most of the time that the children know that the affair is going on before anyone tells them?
Mm-hmm. I do.
It's amazing how perceptive kids are.
You know what? And as much as we like to shelter our children and have them, hopefully not have them be involved, it's being honest. And there's a lot of research that would suggest, trying to be age appropriate with the children, but there's a lot of research that suggests being really honest. Not that, again, when you're telling your children you're getting a divorce, it's a team. You're not going and saying, mommy's bad and we're leaving mommy and mommy's a bad mommy or daddy cheated on with the secretary and, there's none of that. It's more about, because, and here is my biggest thing, children first. So even no matter what kind of couple relationship I have, and I tell them all the time, your children are my first priority. So if it means I can try to keep you together, or if you are going to separate, we're going to separate with, with as much class and dignity and perspective as we can. And I think if we keep our eyes, every study that I read, everything that, that we do in the practice, if you can kind of think of your children as the ball, and if you can keep your eye on the ball, those are statistically to me the divorces that seem to go and the children do just fine.
And that's why our program's designed that the first person they meet with when they come into the program is a parenting mediator who helps them focus on their children. So the message to them is you plan for your children first, and then you build the financial aspects of your agreement around what's best for them.
Which is something I really like, because again, when we go back to what you were talking about, the correlation between this is how much you hurt me and this is how much financially I'm going to punish you, I see that all the time also with parenting, and I know there's so many different, styles there, but, well, you had the affair and I'm going to take the children and you're not going to ever see the children again. And you know what? The children need their parents.
They do.
They need their parents. And then the other thing I see a lot of, and this is kind of more of my narcissist men, not my narcissist women, but my narcissist
you get a
men.
lot of narcissists.
But that's my specialty, I think.
Okay.
But I think what I see a lot of times with people who are a little more self-absorbed, especially kind of my higher, I see a lot of, very, very intelligent, very, very cool people, but they have a sense of, not only am I going to have an affair, but I'm going to take back your, you're not going to have the same lifestyle you've had. And by the way, I am going to take the children at least 50%, if not more, because I'm entitled. And you see that all the time, and I think, can't we just kind of go with that flow? Like, it seems to work for this, and it works for that, and, and I have a case right now, and I just think he's really blowing it. And his children are so going to suffer because of it, and she's a great mom.
And let's go back to that child's perspective. So I'm a child, and I've been told that my parents are divorcing because my mother had an affair. How am I not to feel anger toward her?
Well, first of all, you're already in a trauma situation. I don't care if your child cries or smiles or says, "Oh, it's about time." I don't care what your child says. If studies show with 0 to 9, 9 to 13, and 13 to 18, children will have a different. Each stage of development it'll kind of impact them later on in life, but. It is really a challenge for these children to then trust. They have a hard time trusting. Like, what happened here?
And especially, I guess, the other party's fueling that because they're hurt.
And by the way, that is the one. And I know that's something that you work on, and that's something I work on, and I know we collaborate on that many times. But it doesn't do the children any good because if you think about a child, they're 50% mom and 50% dad. And so if I'm going to badmouth your child, then I'm badmouthing. If I badmouth you, your child's going to say, well, I must be bad like my mom. And, a lot of times children know what's happening in the marriage. They know there's problems. They know what's happening. I do believe, though, when you're honest with the child seems to do a lot better. He's hurt, he's angry, he's frustrated, but he gets over it a lot faster. Then when later on, we're living with our personal trainer, and turns out he, or she has been with, well, that's weird, that was daddy's best friend, or that was mommy's best friend for a long time, and now they're living with us,
So I can see the cheater saying to the child, well, I'm sorry, I blew it. That seems to be the
It does
most
really help.
appropriate to apologize and recognize that it
Validate the
caused hurt.
child's feelings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hey, I'm really sorry. I
Uh-huh.
didn't mean to do
But
this
how
to you.
often do you see that happen?
Okay, so again, we have to look at everything from. I don't know. I call this my couch. My couch statistics.
Right,
But
right.
my males are more likely, to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
than my females. But my females are more likely to really work hard at trying to make sure the children are in a good place.
Good.
Sometimes I think people are actually in their own denial.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of in denial if they're having an affair. I think,
Yeah,
and I think
yeah,
they kind of, and I think it is. It's kind of a trauma for them as well, and they're kind of like minimizing it. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah, trying to sweep it under the carpet.
but then you're making the person you had the affair on crazy. But then think about what you're doing to your children when you're denying it and denying it and denying it.
Yeah. And
Children
what
are
do you
way smarter
what
than
are
we
you
give them credit
modeling
for.
for them when you yourself aren't being honest?
Correct.
I think they learn a lot more from what they see than what you say to them. And if you're modeling dishonesty, then
That's actually a study called Monkey See, Monkey Do.
oh really?
Monkeys grasping, and we
Oh.
model our behavior from our parents by watching their behaviors.
Oh.
The other thing is children are, they're forgiving, and not only that, but we have to teach them we make mistakes. I mean, we do. We all make mistakes, but how we get through the mistake is really the valuable lesson. We call that resilience.
Yes.
How do we then work through this mistake? And maybe by making it right is we're really honest and forthcoming, and we're letting you go to therapy. We're letting you ask questions. We're validating your feelings, and I can't imagine what it must be like to be a child and have my parents say, "We're done."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and more importantly, not only are we done, but we're going to introduce you to new people in our lives.
And I'm so glad you touched on that, because when our parenting mediators are meeting with our parents, that's one of the topics they cover. They actually negotiate when another person will be introduced to the child.
Right, and I do see that a lot. And one of the first cases I ever worked with was, it was really hurtful. It was a really hurtful case, and she was in a lot of pain and a lot of dishonesty. I mean, couldn't have been any more blindsided, and a lot of dishonesty with, and I think infidelity isn't just about sex and relationships, but I think we also have infidelity when it comes to the financials. And this meaning that this person opened up credit cards in her name and took out seconds on the house in her name and took all the children's money and and just really made a lot of really poor decisions. And then kind of left everybody with this like train wreck.
Right.
And instead of kind of coming up to the plate and saying, "Listen, I really screwed up, and we really need to fix this, and we really need to," there was a sense of defensiveness. I'm entitled, and I'm defensive, and
and
she,
you did this, and you did
you
that,
did this, and you did that, right?
deflecting. Yep.
And she was kind of left with that. But I think she was the one in the end who got really stuck. Because she just felt like highway robbery all the way around. She was like, not only did you lie and steal and take and everything, but in that case, I think at times, although I think they're both great parents, I think that would have been a time where the children might have been put in the middle a little bit too much more than I would have liked to have seen. But I know that was one of those cases where it's like, well, I don't want my children around that person. And we call her the paramour, and so I think there was even a contract made that they couldn't be around the paramour.
Well, what we see is a range of situations. Sometimes the cat's already out of the bag.
Yeah.
I had one case where the mother said that this was her friend, and the children knew.
Oh, right.
You don't go on vacation with your friend and sleep in the same room.
Yeah, you don't do that.
So that was unhealthy, but the cat was out of the bag.
How were the children from that? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, they're a mess.
They're a mess.
They're
How old are
a
the
mess.
children now?
Well, I don't know them. I
Right.
just know this secondhand from the clients, but I think they're still struggling. I believe however you handle your divorce is how you're going to handle the rest of your life.
I believe the same way.
Yeah,
And I believe, and I think that I don't care, like no matter what study you read, the more you are forthcoming, honest, and you really put the children's feelings in. They didn't ask for this.
Yeah.
They had no vote. There was nobody who said, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
Yeah.
It was just wrecking ball.
But assuming that the cat's not out of the bag, what would you say would be a reasonable time to have a period where the children weren't introduced to anyone? How much time do they need?
Well, two rules of thumb here. So if we're talking about an affair, you know, I would err on the side of caution and give it a year. If we're not, if the other person doesn't know there was an affair, and you're the only person that knows there was an affair, you know, I'm like, wait a year, because at this point, you know, you've made that choice.
Right.
But my rule of thumb is dating somebody for 6 months. I actually like when somebody's actually. And I know some of my patients will be like, "No, I keep telling you I don't like that." I actually like when the divorce is almost to the end. I actually like when people start dating at the end of the divorce, because I look at the divorce as a healing process. As we're going through this process, that gives us time to heal and to get to a place where we're able to kind of like, you know, wipe ourselves up and get back up again and start dating and kind of know who we are, because we get really lost in a divorce.
One of the things that I'm always mindful of is that when people typically leave a relationship and go through a divorce, they tend to focus on what the other person did or didn't do, and not so much on what they need to change about themselves in terms of the selection of partners they make, the way they...
Now, I have to be biased here.
Okay.
I happen to have the people who are really mindful about learning about what it is that they were attracted to that partner with.
And that's
because I have those
because
people,
they're
right?
with you.
Exactly.
They're
I
with
hate
you.
to say that. So
But
we're really looking at that stuff.
Yeah,
So the
but
other
most
person
people aren't
isn't
with you.
right.
They aren't with a therapist,
Right.
and they're rowing their boat alone. And you know, as I said, focusing on what's wrong with the other person, and to me, that's
And it's like losing yourself in the forest.
Yeah.
It's if I'm constantly focusing on you, how do I even smell the roses today?
Yeah.
Because I'm so about what you're doing.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not going to learn a thing about me.
Right.
And by the way, the longer I focus on you, the longer it takes for me to start my healing process.
Right.
And do you know that statistic?
No. Sure.
Okay, so they say for every 6 years you're married, plan on heavy duty grief for a year.
Oh, really?
And I remember sitting across this gentleman that I've worked with for years. I loved him. Poor guy, he was just like, and so he looked at me looking for hope. What do you got, Stacee? I'm like, ugh. 23 years.
Oh,
I felt like I was giving him the broken mirror, like 7 years of bad luck.
Yeah.
And you know what? Sure enough, we got to, you know, after about 3 or 4 years together, you know, he looks great. He has an awesome job. He's dating somebody. He's in love, and his children are great, and it all worked out. But I think, you know, you're in so much pain. And you can kind of, but the people I notice, and I call it compounded grief, is if I'm in this grieving process and I am so busy focusing on you or the wrongs that have been done to me, and I'm not willing to start to sit in my own pain and kind of say, this sucks, I hate it, I'm angry, I'm bargaining, I'm depressed, it takes a really long time, and they get really stuck. I call it complicated grief. They can't start the process, and they're constantly...
And even the people that come from you and other good therapists are much more able to take those difficult emotions and deal with them properly. Thank you.
Okay.
But those that don't continue to struggle and continue to bring them into the room. But still, they're in our mediation program, and so they're still better off there than they would be if they were with two separate lawyers pouring gas on the fire and, you know, compounding the burdens of the whole experience. So, yeah, it's tough.
And you know, all the variables that come into play really are, you know, and it is frustrating when you're watching this. You know, again, people make mistakes. People fall out of love. Things happen. I'm not. We really can't. I can't judge.
Yeah.
But what I can say is where I do, and I work with other, kind of have like this little group of women that I hang with, and we're all attorneys or women like you know, us, all of us, and other therapists and stuff, and you know, and you find that when we are so punitive to somebody else, we're really not being fair to our children,
Yeah.
to the other person, to anybody else. And I think that if you can find a way to be equal, if you can find a way to accept, if you can find a way to say, listen, this sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks. You know, how many times do we go to a funeral and you hear the person say, oh, he's in a better place. And you're like, really? I don't think so. I feel like the better place is him with, you know, with me. But so when I look at acceptance, I don't look at it as, you know, great, he's dead. That's great. He's dead. I look at acceptance as, okay, this is my new normal. This sucks. This is different, but I have to keep on moving and going forward. And I need to be fair. And I think that the more fair we are, I feel like the better we feel about ourselves.
And the more we get caught up in revenge, it's that old saying that it's like drinking poison, expecting the other person to die, and it's damaging you.
It is hate, and it's just so, and
Yeah.
it's more of the rejection. I think that's really, you know, more about what we say.
I have a question. I'm not sure you can answer it. Do you think that sort of pain, that sort of revenge, deep response, it happens more when there's been an affair than when there hasn't been?
That's an excellent question, because there are, I could probably answer that in one way, but then I worry that then somebody else is watching it going, oh my gosh, Stacee's saying everybody who does that is having an affair.
No.
But what I think, you know, I think affair is definitely not the best way to end a marriage.
It intensifies
it
the pain.
absolutely does. And when you keep the other person, it's like saying, gosh, not only do I not want to be with you, but I really like her, and I'm going to keep her, and I'm going to bring her into our children's lives, and I'm going to give her all the resources that I'm not giving you anymore. And I think it's just like, so it's rejection over, I think, you know, maybe death wouldn't be as hard. I just mean, you know,
I had a client
say, I don't feel rejected.
I had a client say that to me. It would have been better if he died, because at least he didn't choose.
And by the way, we're not saying she wants to kill him. She's just saying, like, if he had had a heart attack, then I wouldn't at least feel rejected.
It wouldn't be rejection,
and not
right?
too impersonal. Yeah. And that is, you know, and I know it's always personal. It always is personal, because when you share these bonds, you hope. You know, that there's communication going in, but I think when you have that, when you've taken the choice away from somebody, I think that's, and it gets to a divorce, I think that's when the other person feels like, hey, I have no choice, my back's against the wall.
Yes.
And then you see a lot of times where they don't even want to get a divorce. They're like, but I still love you, and I want to go to couples therapy, and I want to work on this.
And let's touch on that. There are a lot of cases where the affair doesn't have to end the marriage.
A lot of times that doesn't have to happen.
Yeah.
When somebody gets caught, 90% of those people will come into therapy, I think, when they want to try to heal it. Because they realize we fell down a slippery slope. We stopped communicating. We missed out on something really important, and we got lost. When it is hidden and a secret, and, you know. So think about this. You and I are sitting here. We knew we were going to meet tonight at 7. We had plans. But if I had gone 5 hours earlier, and I had done something that you didn't know about, and I had brought in a whole bunch of other people, and I would blindside you. But I've known for 5 hours, and I made a choice that I didn't share with you.
Right.
It's kind of aggressive. I was aggressive. I said, I'm making a choice for our marriage, and I think in that case, I think that's when the other person feels so wounded, and like, I had no say, and yet I still love you, I still kind of want to be with you, and I see statistics that say that this can be saved, and...
Well, all we can hope is that these people land in your office, because I don't think there's anybody that has more knowledge or experience or good perspective than you on this. So most of the patients that you treat are actually struggling with affairs.
In my actual room. So then I have 13 other, or we have a whole bunch of other therapists. We have kids, and so then it's nice, because then, so I'm working with the parents. Then I can send, you know, the children to one of my other therapists, and I can send the teenager to my other therapist, or I can send one of the individuals to my other therapist, and then we're in-house. We do supervision, and we're able to help each other kind of heal through that process.
Okay. Well,
we're a good little family over there.
It's good work, and
Thank you.
very important work, and
I feel the same.
As I've said many times, I can tell the difference between clients that come in our door who are working with a good therapist and those that aren't, because then we're required to do some of that work when we're working with them, and we don't do it nearly as well as you do. So we always try to get them to go into therapy. It's Very important.
And that's why my mantra, when they come and sit down with me and they're like, what are your thoughts on 50? I'm like, you know what? I defer to the attorneys. I
Yes.
defer to, because
Yeah.
that would be my perspective, not my specialty. It's,
Right. Well, I'll have to say, over the 20 years that I've been doing this, it's people ask me, how do you do it? And I'm sure they ask you the same thing. But for me, it's inspiring.
I was going to say, I wouldn't have even asked you that, because I know it's so rewarding.
It is, because you see people in the worst phase of life, and the human nature is that you're going to strike back, you're going to be bitter, you're going to not play nice. But when they come into our program, they come in the door agreeing that they're going to work together to find solutions to create two new lives at the end of it. And so they're in a lot of pain, but they're still wise enough to know that this is best for them, this is the best for their children. So it's inspiring. Yeah.
I like the way you said I like, when it felt very inspiring to me when you were talking about, I want all the parties to be taken care of. I want both parties to have resources and homes and retirement and the equality there sounds.
Yeah, that's the best road to a good new life. And the slash and burn it causes damage not only to the people you're targeting, but to yourself and your children, and it's just not wise.
No.
So. Well, thank you
You're
for
welcome.
sharing your good perspective, and thank you all for joining us. Again, this is Divorce Periscope, brought to you by Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation. If you have any questions about divorce or separation, I encourage you to go to our website. It's alpha-divorce.com. We have another website called alpharesourcecenter.com, and that site contains some good tools for saving marriages, if they can be saved, and also some good tools for divorce recovery, because what we find is people get out of that last divorce and bump into another bad situation. Yeah.
Different name, same issues.
Right.
That's why,
So that's why we've made it our life's passion to get people through it and, save the marriages if we can. But if we can't, help them make good decisions and hopefully help them not step into the same spot that they just came out of. Anyway, we hope you all have a good night, and thank you for joining us.